Hello, I'm Rob Price. This season, we're exploring AgenticAI from the perspectives of those driving its evolution. Welcome to Futurise.
Hi there, I'm Tim Flagg. I'm the CEO and co-founder of UKAI, the trade association for AI across the UK. And it's a pleasure to join you this morning. A little bit about me and then a little bit about UKAI as well. Most of my career has been in marketing and advertising. And then in the last 12 years, I've been building EdTech. And then in the last 7 years, I've been building AI businesses. And about a year ago, I had the opportunity to go and meet with the government to tell them about what the needs of the AI industry are. And that was a fascinating meeting that led to the formation of UKAI. And what we do is we feed in the needs of the AI industry into government, and then we help and work with the government on their policy to raise awareness of what those policies are and bring industry in to help deliver on those policies. So fast forward a year since we've been going, and we've now got members right across the country, from very large organizations to small organizations, consultancies, both tech and non-tech, people who are wrangling with this challenge of how do we build not just the technical AI businesses, but how do we build AI into our organizations? And there's some common challenges there that I'm sure we'll get into.
I think one of the things that I'm seeing is that there is such variety and such interest out there. We'll come to kind of what you're hearing from that. But if there's some overriding thoughts of that journey of the first year, I've been to a couple of events. I've seen kind of the ability to kind of link that industry ecosystem perspective with government policy and indeed politicians. But what would be your overriding thoughts in terms of the progress over that year?
Yeah, I think when we started, we thought it would be just technical companies, just technology companies who are building AI tools and services. But actually, what we found is that there's only really a few foundational models. There's sort of the big global tech companies, the open AIs of this world, and then the majority of the companies that we're working with are building products and services that use those foundational models to do all sorts of things, everything from HR to transformation to skills. And so actually the definition of what the AI industry is has become a lot broader than I think anyone realized. And as we started to embrace that, we've realized that it's a lot of the established companies as well who are going through this transformation. They're sort of really having to think about how do they get not just their employees to adopt AI tools, but also their customers. And there's a twin challenge there because there's a lot of reluctance. And I think this is one of the bigger challenges that we're trying to address as the industry body now, which is the negative perception around AI. We'll all have heard of the news stories, right? AI is going to end the world. It's going to take my job. It's going to allow criminals to defraud me in my bank. Now it's coming from my copyright. There's so many stories. I think we have to address that head on. And that's what we do as a trade association by bringing people together to discuss all those thorny issues. But also we need to rebuild trust. And I think essential to building that trust is understanding and education. So a lot of what we've been focusing on is around education and skills, not just the technical skills, but the basic AI literacy that will give consumers and employees right across organizations the confidence to then be able to engage with their AI tools and services and really harness and unleash that productivity and efficiency that AI promises.
I think I mean, you're right. I see it time and time again. People focus on the fears, people focus on the concerns, what it can do, and all of that can't downplay that. That's all real. But the opportunity of focusing on what it can do from a positive impact point of view, how it can help deliver and accelerate the delivery of services, I think is a really important to get the balance between that. How are you seeing that play out in this emergent UK AI ecosystem that's out there? Are you seeing? I mean, it's interesting. One of the things that you said earlier was that all over the country, are you seeing kind of groupings of that ecosystem, kind of pockets of innovation in particular areas of the country, for example?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And actually, over the next few months, we're going to be doing a lot more regional events. We've got things coming up in Cambridge, in Manchester, in Liverpool, in Edinburgh, Bristol, because there are those university clusters and established cities and their areas where they have some expertise. One of the big challenges is ensuring that the AI opportunity is diffused out across the UK and it doesn't just sit in London and the southeast. So how do you do that? I mean, the government has launched the concept of the AI growth zones, and that was something which we really supported when it came out. There hasn't been much news. There's only been one announcement of an AI growth zone so far, but there's a lot which have been submitted, and we're just waiting for the government to confirm where those other growth zones are. But I think it really has the opportunity to pull in investment and then other companies, private sector and public sector, into these clusters, or one of our team calls them knowledge towns, where there's actually around the university, around the data center, you can start to build out this ecosystem where you bring the startups in, you bring the scale ups, you bring in universities, you bring in the bigger companies, and everyone kind of learns and shares from this ecosystem. And it can really address some of these challenges around displaced workers. The government has shown interest in investing in some of the areas where there have been a lot of jobs lost from things like manufacturing or mining. So I think there's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of ideas about it. There's certainly a lot of interest, but we just need to have a lot more clarity now from the government on where these AI growth zones are going to be, and how that is then going to materialize into real investment and real change.
I guess that, I mean, there's so many things that come to mind because in part the challenge is in this hugely kind of accelerated global innovation ecosystem around AI, how on earth does anyone keep up with that? Because the pace of change is so great. So thinking about the education and level of understanding across academia, schools, government, business. I mean, that's a hard challenge in its own right. And therefore, the importance of a policy that's achievable, so executable, having a clear direction, but being able to make that real, that's a big challenge, actually, if we think about it. Where do you start? I mean, how is the UK government thinking about policies to deliver the things that you've just talked about there?
Yeah, so the AI growth zones is one sort of initiative that we've talked about, but I think what you're getting onto now is really around sort of skills. And we've been calling for the government to have earlier skills, so earlier in primary school, and broader skills. So not just technical skills, but also the more AI, basic AI literacy skills as well. And actually, back in June, they announced the Tech First investment, 146 million into both those things. So earlier education, putting it earlier in the curriculum, and also having it lifelong learning for all people at all ages to be able to come and learn the basics. So that's great. I think those are the two things that I'd focus on. How do we get it more into the curriculum? How do we empower teachers? Because school itself, we could probably do a whole podcast on AI in schools, but there are some very good teachers there who are wanting to bring it in and show how it can be used positively, give children the sort of guardrails to use it. And they're slightly being held back because the curriculum and the central guidance hasn't got there yet. But I think that's what the government's trying to focus on, is like updating the curriculum. There's a number of initiatives they've got to look at the curriculum and skills and to ensure that it's fit for purpose. The challenge there is speed, because as you know, these things take a lot of time to go through those kind of processes. And then on the other side, how can we actually get more lifelong learners at all ages to have that basic AI literacy? And I think partly that is through industry being able to get involved there and provide the skills, get into the communities, engage. And this is a lot of our members are involved with exactly this, engaging with ensuring that employees and customers are able to get those basic AI literacy skills, and then feel confident about using the products and services within their organization, or buying products and services from companies. So I think those are the two things, earlier and broader.
So if we can pull together a number of those threads and thinking about as we move through raising the level of skills, people moving into business and in a sense trying to get this balance right between safe use of those technologies that are there to do great work, whether in government, whether in business. I guess that kind of brings us to the point around regulation and innovation. So I've spent most of my career working for European organisations, and therefore things like the EU AI Act has been front of mind for me. I mentioned earlier before we started the call, a lot of the work that we're doing is in the US. So kind of the evolution at the moment that we're seeing in terms of um, policy or approaches in the US, it becomes ever important. How do you think that the UK is getting this um, regional balance, the UK perspective around getting it right in terms of making sure that we're doing things consciously and safely and right, but at the same time driving forward around innovating and being able to create value?
Yeah, I think this is a really important topic because you're right. On the global landscape, we used to talk about having two extremes. You had the EU AI Act, which was very detailed and quite rigid, but had some principle-based guidance on what companies should and shouldn't do with regards to AI. And on the other end of the extreme, you had the US, who was before January was still quite laissez-faire, and then since then, what you found is that obviously the US with Trump has just got rid of a lot of the executive orders, got rid of a lot of what was being planned, and so it's become even more extreme. So that sort of geopolitical landscape now looks very different. And where does the UK sit on that? We used to talk about where does the UK sit between those two extremes, but now I think the opportunity is for the UK to find its own position. I went to the AI for Good summit in Geneva a couple of weeks ago, and it was interesting to talk to people from all over the world, from AI organizations, but also businesses. And they were sort of saying that, really on a geopolitical perspective, it's really US and China. They're the two big players who are building the foundational tech. And then there's the rest of the world. And the rest of the world needs to collaborate and work together on things like standards. And if they do that, then there's a really interesting role for the UK to play. And I think it can be a leadership role without it being a sort of role that then disadvantages those other countries. I think it's a very collaborative, collegiate role to establish responsible and AI for good. Um, so I often think about the what do you have that actually makes this happen? You've got regulation, laws at the top. Then you've got standards, so coming together to establish what good looks like and having codes of conducts and things like ISOs. And then you've got labels, things like consumer labels that allow consumers to make choices. Those, for me, are the three levels: the regulation, standard, labels. And obviously, EU AI Act is a regulation; it's law. But I think there's a lot of work which we can do, and we are doing, on standards internationally to collaborate to set those standards for things like safety. And then on consumer labeling, I think there's a lot we can do there, like the B Corp or like fair trade, to allow companies who are responsible, ethical, and sustainable to highlight that and allow consumers to make the decisions about who they want to work with. So that's certainly something that we're focusing on. But it comes back to this big opportunity that we see for the UK to really be a leader in this space.
I really like that you've pulled that out. Digital responsibility or responsibility, AI responsibility as a differentiator, as a value add, enabling consumer differentiation. Because I think a lot of people have seen it for a long time as an onerous extra that they're being forced to have. So it's turning it round and seeing it as this is a way of building greater trust in the organizations or the people that you're trying to engage with. I think it's a really important point. So we talked
Well, I think
about.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say the word trust is critical there. So I'm glad you reflect that back, because that is the thing that we need to build. I talked before about those news stories which aren't helping. They're undermining trust. A lot of the things which are happening undermine trust. Education and understanding will rebuild trust. And only when we have consumer trust will we be able to then see our businesses grow and lead to the economic growth that the government wants.
Absolutely, completely agree. So bringing all that together, we've talked about skills, we've talked about responsibility, trust, regulation, policies. Over the last year, I mean, we started off by talking about the members and the people you represent, the organisations you represent. Are they the things that they are talking about? Are there other things that they would highlight as why are they joining? Kind of what's the thing that's forefront of their mind that they need help with?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the one unifying factor is that they see the opportunity of building an AI industry in the UK, and they want to shape it to be as successful as possible. That's the one common denominator from the big data centers to the law firms to the consultancies to the small tech businesses. They all want that. And I think there's also the recognition that they don't, we as an industry don't really know yet what areas are going to be the most important or the most successful, but we want to come together and share knowledge. So I'd say there's a lot, there's two things that really people get from being a part of UK AI. One is the interface with the government, to really understand what the government is planning, but also to have some input into that, to be able to kind of share thoughts. There's a lot of, the government often will ask for technical insights. How does this affect, how we did one recently on cybersecurity and AI. So businesses, our members were able to come and share their experiences of what it means to build agentic AI, and what are the considerations or what aren't the considerations around cybersecurity within that space at the moment, which was really interesting. So there's that sort of feed in to government. But then I think there's also an education part for those businesses coming in and stepping into those meetings that we often will have in Parliament. People can then understand more about how government works, how the government departments work, how laws work, and specifically how it affects their businesses and what's coming down the line in terms of regulation, for example, how that will affect their business. So there's that sort of education part. And then thirdly, I'd say there's the sort of networking bit, which is, it's often quite hard to know what other businesses are doing, but when you can sit in a room and people are sharing information like that, you often see similarities and contrasts, and it can help you learn the context of your business, what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And sometimes it's just a great relief to know that other people are facing those exact challenges, and it's not just you and your company which is facing that, but other people are as well. So there's that sort of networking bit, but also then the classics of networking of smaller businesses meeting bigger businesses, people making partnerships. We had a number of our members who've combined forces. They've got sort of overlapping or mutually exclusive businesses that when they pair together, they can actually have a great partnership. We've got investors, we've got companies that need investment, we've got consultancies, we've got companies that need help with different areas. So all of those things have come together in this kind of rich discussion. But I'd say it comes down to that unifying factor that everyone's kind of really interested in how we shape this industry as well.
That's fantastic. You touched on, and I can't not pick on AgenticAI, and I say that in the sense that this second season of Futurise, we've explored AgenticAI from different perspectives, whether that be the early adopters, the investors, people delivering those services. I think it feels as though, I mean, we're about a year in, it feels. I think the term kind of took over LinkedIn about last summer. And of course, in some ways, it feels a bit like cloud did. Kind of everything is agentic, no matter kind of what it is underneath the bonnet, so to speak. But if we think about agentic in the context of agents, multi-agents, digital workers, even a term that kind of is beginning to kind of be used as well. How much is that being discussed by your members, and is it front of mind yet, or is it kind of just something that people are beginning to get to?
So yeah, there's a few sort of topics to pull out there in terms of where are we in the discussion. I think it's something which most of our members are talking about a lot. So the ones we have a number of members who are consultancies or who are driving transformation, or their companies they're large organizations who are going through that transformation. I think those are the ones who are actively talking about agentic and really interested in that, and obviously the companies who are making agentic solutions as well. So for them, it's been a conversation that I've seen really come to the fore in the last 6 months. There's huge opportunities there, but there's also quite a few risks. And I think this is the challenge. We've touched upon this a little bit already. With the pace of change and the pressure to build new AI solutions, which often comes from the top, then we need to also just make sure that we're not building in risks and vulnerabilities. And this is one of the common themes that we hear, which is that our members in particular, if they're consultancy going in and building these solutions, they'll say that something has been built where it's been rushed because someone's had to build something quickly. They haven't thought about the data security or the privacy or the just how it's opened up their entire system to new threats and vulnerabilities. So then that's the sort of bit which they go in and create. I think we're seeing more protocols be established, whether it be for cybersecurity, whether it be for software development, that take account of all of this. And obviously, there's announcements all the time. There was an announcement this week from OpenAI about their latest 5, with a whole bunch of extra features which will help with the agentic model there as well. So at one level, there's constant innovations which are driving this. But I think then the interesting bit is knowing how to do this safely within your organization. That's the real challenge.
It comes back absolutely to trust and safety. But equally, I think it's also an opportunity to think of it in the way that we would have done within enterprise businesses before. As you say, kind of, if you're going to, how would you design something such that it is secure? How do you think about cybersecurity and threat? How do you ensure that the data is used in? So in a sense, we can apply those. The same things, the same thinking. It's just kind of operating in a very iterative, fast way. I think the other thing you said at the start that, or earlier in the conversation, that the investment and the focus and the models are China and the US, and in a sense, I guess Agentic presents an opportunity for other countries and the UK to actually recognize that they can utilize those models, or indeed small language models, in the context of powering agents, and create differentiation and momentum there. So that if kind of countries aren't going to go into the producing ever more powerful models, thinking about how you use those models in a way that fulfills those needs around trust and safety may be kind of an angle. Do you have a view emerging yet about what a UK position might be on agentic AI?
Um, yeah, so I think the first question is really interesting. Well, they're both very interesting questions, but particularly interesting, I should say, in terms of where can the UK lead? Is it in building the foundational models, or is it in building the application layer on top of it? And I hinted at this at the beginning when I said a lot of our members, and when we started, we thought it would be about building the technology, but it's actually more, the UK specialises more in building the application layer. And I think it makes sense historically if you look at where the UK has excelled over the last probably like 40, 50 years, as we've moved away from manufacturing into the service sector. We've led in things like finance and in law and in education, and a number of other service industries as well, but those ones in particular. And so it's no surprise when it comes to then looking at the technology that service layer, the application layer, is where the UK has the biggest opportunity. And I think we're starting to see that as a country. UK AI, we can definitely see that because that's what our members have been showing us for the last year. And we're trying to sort of push very much that's the big opportunity for the UK to lead in. In terms of the technical question, which you were saying around, well, what does that mean in terms of that small language models? Absolutely. And this is one of the things that we're getting quite a lot of, we're having a lot of conversations about now, because there are really interesting alternative models, either alternative to the foundation models or additional models that can be built on top of, like the agentic example you gave. And things like federated learning as well, where rather than the learning taking place in one large data center that has all the compute and it happens there, the federated learning with the actual model goes to different data centers where data is kept. And as it goes round, it learns from the data in that data center and then goes on to the next data center and learns from that. Now, the reason that's good is that then the data can be kept in those data centers much more securely and privately, privacy safe. And it just allows that more distributed way of working, which is really interesting from a data security, data privacy perspective. There's all sorts of considerations around smaller language models in terms of the data centers which will be needed to support those, and whether that could be a more distributed model of data centers rather than having these very large ones. So we're starting to see that very much, and there's a lot of interest in what implication that has both on infrastructure, but on sustainability as well, because if we don't need to build as big as centers, then there's a lot more we can do to use the heat that comes from the data centers, but also to minimize the amount of energy which is used and just do it in a much more efficient way. So yeah, I mean, that's true across the board. I think specifically with agentic, as well, there is a big opportunity for the UK to lead there. And it comes back to our abilities in things like cybersecurity and our international language and all of the kind of research and all of the other things which the UK is good in, that allow us to build these services on top of the foundational models.
I just think it's two brilliant points to finish on. But I am slightly biased in this, in that one of the points that I've been talking about probably for the last year is, do we need data warehouses, data lakes anymore? Because you could use agents as the glue between kind of the disparate kind of sources, the data wherever it is at a point in time. Not quite there yet. That's theory rather than anything else. And I completely agree around the sustainability angle. Agentic does not need to be as power hungry as the kind of large models. So they're really interesting. It's been great talking about a number of things. I'm kind of conscious that we could have probably done a podcast about each single point, because we could have we've skated across the surface, and there's a massive depth to each of those kind of parts of the conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed the two events that I've been to. What's for anyone listening, if they kind of wanted to know a bit more about UK AI and how to join, or indeed what your next event will be?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So we have a number of events coming up. We have events coming up in Parliament, where we bring our members in with academics and third sector to meet with MPs and peers and really have those kind of conversations around these big thorny topics, but within Parliament. So we've got events coming up on infrastructure and AI. We've got events coming up on how do we prevent the perpetuation of online misogyny into AI. And we've got an event coming up on young people and AI as well. And then more broadly than that, we've got a whole bunch of events coming up around the country. We've got something coming up in Cambridge Tech Week. We're up at the Conservative and Labour Party conferences, talking about how to get Britain growing. And then we've got two conferences going on Get Britain Growing and how AI is key to that, both in Brighton and up in Manchester as well. There's probably other things I'm forgetting, but we've also got the working groups going now as well, which are specialist groups that look at some of these topics in more details from among our memberships. We've got one in women in AI, one in skills, one in life sciences, one in law, one in agentic. We've got a whole bunch of these things coming up. So yeah, please do come along, get in touch, follow what we're doing on LinkedIn. And if you've enjoyed these conversations, I mean, you can get a lot more of this through UK AI.
That's great. And as I'm sat in the East Midlands at the moment, I look forward to the day when there's an East Midlands event as well. But Tim, it's been a pleasure talking, and thank you very much.
No, thank you, Rob. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.